Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Purple Politics, hosted by political expert and commentator Alina Gonzalez Dockery. Join us to discuss the most important issues affecting our nation with fresh, balanced, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Purple Politics starts right now.
With 10 weeks left until Election Day, welcome to another episode of Purple Politics. I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez Dockery, and we are starting to see economic policies being shelled out by Kamala Harris, and also some defining and tweaks in the Trump economic policies as well. So let's just jump right in. Vice President Kamala Harris is trying to distance herself from the Biden administration's tax policies, and she's using this to differentiate herself from both her Republican opponent, Donald Trump, and her predecessor, President Biden. Now, whether this works, we shall see, but she is presenting herself as a more moderate economic policy. She aims to appeal to a broader range of voters, which is very smart, while still maintaining the populist rhetoric that resonates with her party. Basically, tax the rich to the point of all of us are going to be taxed. I mean, that is the truth. But with the progressive agenda and the fact that she has been known as an extreme progressive senator as well as candidate, will Kamala Harris's move to the middle, trying to profess that she is a candidate for the middle class and being more moderate, work? Let's flash back to 2019 when the Democrats dusted off Biden from retirement and put him in because he was a so-called moderate. And he was the only hope for the party to beat Trump, which he did, but based on the fact that he was campaigning as a moderate. But once he went into power, that's when the progressive agenda took hold. But let's go more into details because there's been a lot of talk about these tax cuts or these tax increases. So during Kamala Harris's New Hampshire campaign stop, she signaled a shift from Biden's tax plan by proposing a 28% capital gains tax for individuals earning over $1 million, lower than the 39.6% Biden is advocating in his current budget. This move marks a huge departure. Now, let's take this for an instant because a lot of people are going, oh, she's only going after millionaires. The reality is $1 million middle-class millionaire. There are more middle-class individuals that are worth $1 million plus, not only because of their investments, their IRAs, but also their houses. And the reality is that the vast majority of us middle-class people, our main assets are our retirement, which are investments, as well as our houses. So to have a capital gains tax at 28% over those earning over $1 million, that is going to affect a broad base of the middle class to, of course, the upper class and the mega wealthy. While raising taxes on wealthy remains a Democratic priority, Harris's adjustment signals a more business-friendly approach. She is also targeting those Americans worth at least $100 million to pay taxes on unrealized gains. Now, this has a potential of affecting our economy as well, because by attacking the unrealized gains of those that are investing $100 million plus investors, they will pull money out of the economy. They will start investing in the stock market, which may cause a more furthering of a recession. These are all legitimate concerns. Also, the reality is once you start doing taxes on one unrealized gains, it's going to trickle down to all of us. And it's the truth. And there's also another potential major hit that is going to affect you and me, the average person. And that is if they do away with the step up in basis. What that means is the unrealized gain. So when someone passes away, say, for example, my parents who have invested and have secured themselves a rather nice little pot of money for their retirement, when they transfer that their wealth, quote unquote, that investments through an inheritance to their children, to us, to myself and my siblings, we receive a step up in basis. What that means is we receive it in our tax at the basis that we receive it in value if we sell those stocks or we sell the house or what have you. What Harris is throwing out there is saying, well, you know what? Anything over $5 million, we're going to do an unrealized tax at the time of death. So that means if, let's say, someone invests, you have a 98-year-old person who dies, but they invested in Apple when Apple was just an IPO, and you have all of that increase in stocks. Well, what that means is that is going to be hit rather than the step up in basis. That also could affect homes. Now, people are going to say, oh, but this is for $5 million. Well, what happens if it's a spouse? Husband dies, a husband of 60 some years dies, and the wife is holding on to assets that are over $5 million. Could very well include investments. It's definitely going to go after the boomers, because they're saying that when the boomers start retiring and then dying, that there's going to be huge transfer of wealth. But it's very interesting in seeing that. Now, what we have on the flip side is drill baby drill Trump. Trump pledging that he can drop prices in energy, and though experts aren't really seeing how it's going to be possible within a year, but his basic promise is to extend his current tax cuts. Now, remember, the tax cuts that were initiated with Congress, which obviously all of this is with Congress, those tax breaks are going to be lapsing or terminating in 2025. We're looking at in a few months, 2025. That means all of us, including the middle class, will be affected, because our tax brackets will be then put back up to the pre-2017 tax bracket. Now, he promises to not only cut American energy costs by half or more, his plan relies heavily on accelerating oil and natural gas production through faster permitting, weaker environmental regulations, and other policy changes. And though experts are skeptical about the feasibility of this promise, citing the various factors that influence energy prices, such as weather patterns, global conflicts, and regional market dynamics, these are all well beyond the control of any president. A key challenge to Trump's strategy is the reluctance of oil companies to increase production. Many drillers are focused on returning profits to shareholders rather than expanding output. This cautious approach is partly due to the uncertain economic outlook and past market bust in the energy sector. Despite Trump's assertions, analysts argue that there is no political magic wand that can quickly boost oil production, which is true. And in fact, Biden, granted, he put up brakes all over the place in his first couple of years. This year has been asking for more exploration. Let's do more with oil production, because Biden's administration has shrunken our reserve to very little, and the oil companies are not really jumping on this. And although energy prices have eased recently, electricity costs in the U.S. have continued to rise faster than overall consumer prices. A spokeswoman for Trump's campaign claimed that the anticipation of increased supply from his policies would lead to an immediate drop in energy prices. However, is still skeptical, as many factors affecting electricity costs, such as natural gas prices and regional power generation differences, are not easily influenced by deregulation alone. Trump's promise to roll back Biden-era environmental regulations on fossil fuel-fired power plants also raised questions about his potential impact. And then there's also the accusations that Trump loves to levy against OPEC for allegedly manipulating oil prices in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. Love him or hate him, he does make for good fodder. But now here's another interesting thing. So we have witnessed last week prior to Labor Day weekend, which I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, we saw a unity government. That is now the new campaign rhetoric from Trump, and that is because RFK has come on to the Trump bandwagon, endorsing him, as well as Tulsi Gabbard, which personally I wish she was the VP candidate, because I think that would have been greatly effective. And also, she's just very real and straightforward. But what's really interesting too is now Elon Musk is becoming a bigger participant in what would be the administration of a Donald Trump presidency, or presidency 2.0. Donald Trump has proposed the creation of a government efficiency commission, which, by the way, I think would be phenomenal. This idea was originally suggested by billionaire Elon Musk. Trump stated that Musk would lead this commission, which would perform a comprehensive audit of the federal government and recommend significant reforms aimed at cutting waste. Now, let's face it. So Kamala Harris's proposed tax increases on the mega wealthy, on corporations, on capital gains, on unrealized gain, as well as effectively stripping of the step up in basis of assets over 5 million, would garner about $5 trillion in revenue for the government. Now, we all know the government is not running on $5 trillion. So if this were any corporation or any business or even any household, we have to budget. And when we see that our money is not, if we're extending our credit and we're relying on our credit, it is time to look at the meat of what is going on in the family, in the corporation, in the business, and yes, the government. So yes, I'm all for this commission, because by looking through all of the expenses of the bureaucracy and cutting off the heads, cutting out the expenses that are not necessary, this would streamline and make our government more efficient, just like any business. And no, I'm not saying that the government is a business, but you know what? When the tax dollars, the taxpayers are the ones footing the bill, we need accountability. We need a zero balance budget. Nobody's suggesting that yet, but we do need to look at how is it that our government has become so bloated that the vast majority of money that is paid to a bureaucratic agency, Department of Education, CDC, FDA, and so on, how is it so bloated that we are not reaping the benefits that we are, as the people, are supposed to be getting through these programs or what have you, when the staff or there's areas of waste? It is time. And also, I mean, we keep getting reports that the Department of the Military is, it came out $220 billion in fraud that was lost, and also they have no idea where some monies are going. This is our tax dollars. It is time. So hopefully, maybe Harris, who's jumped on the bandwagon of Trump's no taxing of tips for restaurant workers, maybe she too will look at potentially creating a commission to cut the bloat, to cut the fat off of the bureaucracy. We are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to jump into some non-political news. Tune right back. It is with a heavy heart that I have to even report or comment on another school shooting. On September 4th, 2024, a tragic and horrific incident occurred at the Apalachee High School in Winder, Georgia, making it the deadliest school shooting in this state's history. The suspect, a 14-year-old student identified as Colt Gray, is accused of using a military-style rifle, killing 2 students, Christian Angulu, and Mason Shermerhan, both 14 years of age, and 2 teachers, 53-year-old math teacher Christina Iremi and 39-year-old math teacher and assistant coach Richard Aspinwall. 8 others were injured and hospitalized. The investigation revealed that Gray had a troubling obsession with previous mass shootings, particularly the 2018 Parkland, Florida massacre. Law enforcement officials had previously interviewed Gray about online threats related to school shootings, but found no conclusive evidence to prevent the attack. This tragedy shocked the small community of Winder and has raised questions about missed opportunities to prevent this horrific scene. Although sheriff's officers have investigated threats made by Gray in 2023, no decisive action was taken at the time due to insufficient evidence linking him directly to the threats. The local sheriff expressed deep regret and emphasized that the investigation at the time was as thorough as possible given the available information. I'm going to pause for a moment because I grew up in what would be seen as a small rural town in Central Florida. And I knew many friends who grew up hunting with guns and such, but I'm going to tell you right now, I have never had this. Never did we experience these type of mass shootings, and it is becoming epidemic in the United States. What is happening? The question has to be asked, and this isn't about politics. It is not about, oh, this is the time for gun reform and blah, blah, blah. Yes, that is a conversation, but there is a bigger issue here. Why is it that we're seeing young people thinking it's okay? Is it for the fame? Is it for the glorification? Or is it the fact that, growing up in the 1970s and 1980s, and I don't care if I'm aging myself, we sat down every night to family dinners. Yes, we had extracurricular activities after school, but we still came home. We had dinner as a family. We talked. I mean, it's, people make fun of the Gen X thing going, oh, about our parents. Do you know where your children are? You know what? The reality is our parents knew exactly where we were and where we were doing. Yes, we had free reign to run around our neighborhoods and play until dark, but it was because it was safe. I mean, the biggest scare was when the kidnapping of Adam Walsh. That changed how parents felt, with the, young children. And yes, we were taught stranger danger, but this is an epidemic. I mean, at 9:45 a.m., this troubled young man left his classroom, and thankfully, because of changes that they implemented at the school, the door locked. And when he tried to get back in, one of his fellow students went to go open the door for him, but then they saw the gun and they refused. That saved the life of not only that student, but probably all of those in that classroom. And this shooting was partially mitigated by recently implemented security measures at the school. A new alert system installed just a week before the incident allowed staff to quickly notify police and initiate a lockdown. This system, including panic buttons on ID badges, likely played a crucial role in preventing further casualties. The response from school resource officers were swift, with one officer reportedly engaging Gray within minutes of the alarm being triggered, preventing even greater loss of life. Georgia's recent changes in gun laws and the lack of certain safety regulations have also come under scrutiny. The state's 2022 law allowing residents to carry firearms without a permit in the absence of universal background checks and safe storage requirements has sparked debate. However, the bottom line is this was a minor. Whether he took one of his dad's hunting rifles, that is to remain to be seen. But the bottom line is this isn't about politics. This isn't about criticizing whether VP Harris is coming out during her rally or Trump in a in a truth tweet, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is that there is a grave issue. We have a challenge, whether it's because we are no longer talking and conversing with our children, whether it's because the family unit is being attacked by, that some people feel like we are not acting as a family unit anymore, that we're overloading our kids with so much activities that we're running, around and nobody's actually talking to the kids, or whether it's just that we're cramming these teachers with standardized testing, and now kids having to do not only fire drills, but shooting drills and all the matter, that nobody is reaching out to these kids and asking them, how are you doing? What's going on at school? What's going on with you? Wednesday's mass shooting was the 45th school shooting so far this year. This year. And the deadliest school shooting since the March 2023 massacre at the Covenant School in Nashville that left 6 dead. And we have yet to hear about the manifesto on that school. Now, this young man, Colt Gray, 14 years old, he surrendered. He was arrested. He is being charged as an adult with felony murder charges. But the bigger implication isn't about politics. It's not about whether you are a Second Amendment person or NRA or anti-NRA. That's not what this is about. This is about common sense and looking back and seeing what is going on here, that we are having young people thinking that it is a good idea to shoot up their friends. What is happening in our society? What is happening to the family unit, the basics? As much as anybody wants to bitch and complain about COVID, one of the things that I kept on hearing from my friends was like, with, things slowing down, I had friends going, oh my God, Alina, we're sitting down as a family for family dinners. It reminded us of us growing up and how we always got together. I mean, it took a pandemic for people to slow down and go, you know what, let's spend some more time with family. And also, because of those lockdowns, because of the shutting down of schools, because of the lack of resources that helped children who were so isolated in the most crucial years, we see an epidemic of mental health crisis increase in spike since the COVID pandemic lockdown, whether I agree with it or not, and I didn't. But one thing is for certain, we need to look at the family unit and how can we support the family unit and being able for the parents to be able to reconnect with the children, and how this parent, and rather than worrying about pronouns and teaching the different pronouns, how about a teacher being able to look at a kid and go, hey, Johnny, how are you doing today? Hey, Susie, are you okay? Do you need to talk? I'm here. And no, teachers are not therapists or counselors, but you know what? They are the ones who have the most access and around our kids. My heart goes out to the families of, and I'm sorry if I'm a little emotional, to the family of those two 14-year-old children, because no parent should lose a child, especially in this manner. And our hearts go out in prayers to those two brave teachers who passed. And I pray for Colt Gray, because through this devastating massacre, my hope is that we will be able to find out what prompted a 14-year-old boy, and he is a boy, he's not a young man, thought that it was a good idea to bring a gun and shoot up his school. We're going to take a quick break so I can compose myself, and we can go on to other news. Tune right back in. Guess we're still going to go on a little bit of a somber note. 6 Israeli hostages were found executed by Hamas. Hamas executed 6 Israeli hostages just prior to the Israeli forces coming to save them. On September 4, 2024, Hamas released a video showing 2 hostages, Carmel Gat and Alexander Lobanov, recorded before their deaths. Their bodies, along with those of 4 other hostages, were recently recovered by Israeli forces from a tunnel in the Gaza Strip. This release, following previous videos of other hostages, aims to keep the captives' plight in the public eye amid ongoing conflict. The Israeli Ministry of Health reported that the 4 hostages had been shot at close range between Thursday and Friday morning. Over 60 hostages are still alive, and the bodies of about 35 others taken during the October 7 Hamas-led attack are still in Gaza. The video release comes as international negotiators attempt to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, but until Hamas is held responsible, they are releasing these videos during the funerals of the 6 hostages, one of which a U.S. citizen, Herschel. In Israel, the status of the hostages and the government's decision to continue the war has sparked significant debate. Many Israelis are protesting Benjamin Netanyahu's manner in which handling this Gaza war, accusing him of prioritizing military action over the safety of the hostages. However, anytime there is any negotiation, Hamas says another thing. The recent videos from Hamas seem to exacerbate the internal tension. The United Nations Security Council held its first session on the hostage situation, prompted by Israel's request. My goodness, we're almost a year. We are 11 months into this, and they are now just getting. Israeli officials used the session to highlight the personal stories of the hostages while also addressing criticism of Israel's military actions in Gaza and the West Bank. The discussion included calls for both a ceasefire, which Hamas is using these hostages, which they don't even know how many are alive, as a way of getting Palestinians that have committed atrocities in Israel freed from Israeli prisons, but also they are now using threats that more, if Israel continues to go into the tunnels to look and try to seek the saving of these hostages, which still include more U.S. citizens, by the way, we should all be outraged. They are using these hostages and they are now threatening to put them down and kill them and execute them. The Israeli military revealed that the shaft leading to the tunnel where the hostages' bodies were found was located inside a children's playground, surrounded by children's toys and decorations. This discovery underscores the ongoing issue of Hamas using civilian areas for military purposes, further complicating the conflict and the search for a resolution. And as airstrikes resume in central Gaza, polio campaign enters new phase. But before we get this, so now polio, which we all here in the United States think, oh, that's a old disease. We don't really have that because we all been vaccinated. In Gaza, no, and Israel's doing this. But I first think that it would be good so that we can name the names of those Israeli hostages that were found, murdered, executed. And God only knows what other brutality they suffered in these 11 months since their capture on October 7, 2023. Their names: Carmel Gat, Eden Yerushalmi, Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland, Alexander Lobanov, Almog Sarosi, and Master Sergeant Ori Danino. Those were the hostages. Those were the bodies that were found executed. just prior to them being saved. And following the completion of the first phase of a polio vaccination campaign in central Gaza, an Israeli airstrike hit the courtyard of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah, killing 4 people and injuring others, including women and children. The attack highlights the challenges of coordinating humanitarian efforts amid ongoing hostilities. Despite the temporary pauses in combat designed to facilitate vaccination, such incidents underscore the precarious nature of such arrangements. The World Health Organization announced the transition to the second phase of the vaccination campaign in southern Gaza, aiming to immunize about 640,000 children against polio. The first phase, which successfully vaccinated over 187,000 children, faced significant logistical challenges due to the destruction of cold storage and transport infrastructure caused by the war. The campaign continues amid dire conditions, exacerbated by the conflict, with displaced people living in unsanitary and cramped conditions. The WHO and aid organizations have praised the temporary ceasefires for allowing health workers to reach vulnerable children. However, there are ongoing criticism from various quarters, including Israeli lawmakers, who argue that such pauses could benefit Hamas by allowing them to regroup. The situation remains complex, with both humanitarian and military objectives in tension. In the West Bank, Israeli airstrikes have intensified, resulting in significant casualties and widespread destruction. The raids aimed at targeting Palestinian armed groups have exacerbated the suffering of civilians. Reports indicate that daily life has become increasingly difficult, with extensive damage to infrastructure and homes, particularly in cities like Jenin and Tulkarm. The conflict has resulted in substantial loss of life and severe disruption of daily activities. Efforts to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas are ongoing, with the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar working to finalize a proposal. Key issues include the terms of a potential truce by the conditions for the release of hostages and prisoners. The problem we are seeing now is Hamas has released a video stating that they will execute the hostages, which people are saying, well, wait a minute, if you're threatening to execute the hostages and you are executing the hostages, that doesn't help with your leverage. Also, there is significant evidence to believe that Hamas's leadership cannot get in contact with the militants that are there in the tunnels, and that now the more surgence of Israeli forces within the tunnels, the more that they are gaining control of Gaza, it's forcing them to not have any communication. But I'm going to throw out this question. Is there really any negotiating with a terrorist group that their number one objective is to hold the people of Gaza hostage themselves? Because as they state, there is they can recruit militants, and that is unfortunate, because the next generation of children is going to grow up after this war, after this, what is being experienced in Gaza, to hate Israel. And that is huge. But also Israel. Let's look at what Israel's enduring. Israel's enduring still attacks from Hamas, from Palestine, attacks from Hamas via the West Bank. You have Hezbollah still firing missiles at Israel on the border. You also have Lebanon throwing in there. I mean, we are starting to see more and more attacks. When is our administration? I love how Biden comes out and says Hamas will pay for the atrocities of these 6 hostages executed. But yet nothing comes of it. His words are meaningless, just like what his words were on October 7th. And unfortunately, because it is an election year, you're going to see this being politicized, but it's not an issue with politics. This is an issue of survival of a country. And the bottom line, no, it is not genocide. Hello, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian groups. This is not genocide by Israel. This is Israel's survival. Because just like everybody's stating that Palestine has a right to free existence, to be a state with a governing body and such, so does Israel. But until such time as we can rebuild, get the ceasefire, root out Hamas, will there ever be peace in the Middle East? Will we see any of our hostages come home alive? We have two young little members of hostages. One little hostage, an Israeli little boy who loves Batman, turned 5 while still being held captive by Hamas. The youngest is only an infant. Our hearts to the families and those hostages that were killed, executed by a terrorist organization. And our hearts are going to those innocent women, children, and men who want nothing more than just to have a free existence. I am Alina Gonzalez Dockery. We're going to take a quick commercial break, tune right back in. Okay, so let's tune into what is going on in the Department of Justice. We have from Washington, D.C. to California, there is drama all around when it comes to court proceedings. And I am talking about court proceedings against Donald Trump, former president, and the current president's son, Hunter Biden. Judge says Trump's campaign is not relevant to his 2020 case. On September 5th, a federal hearing took place regarding former President Donald Trump's case concerning allegations of attempting to overturn the 2020 election results. Judge Tanya S. Shudakan presided over the session, where she emphasized that the upcoming November election was not relevant to the scheduling and progress of the case. The judge made it clear that she would not let the election cycle influence the legal proceedings, maintaining that the focus should remain strictly on the legal matters at hand. Ironically, the defendant in this matter did waive his right to a speedy trial. So again, this is the prosecution working hand in hand with the judge, forcing a trial, though the prosecution has no right to speedy trial. Anyway. The hearing aimed to address how the Supreme Court's recent ruling on presidential immunity affects the case. The Supreme Court had granted Trump some immunity for actions performed in an official capacity, did not provide a blanket protection for all actions, despite what histrionics and people on X are stating. This ruling necessitates a review of the revised indictment to determine which allegations should be dismissed or retained. The judge indicated that she would issue a written order outlining her approach, but did not provide a timeline for this decision. During the hearing, there was a notable clash between Trump's defense attorney, John Lauro, and prosecutor Thomas P. Windham. Lauro argued for a delay in addressing immunity issues until after the election, expressing concern that new evidence might be disclosed publicly before the election, potentially affecting Trump's campaign. You mean election interference? No, never. In contrast, Windham suggested that the prosecution should provide a detailed brief in about 3 weeks, arguing that new evidence would support the continuation of the indictment despite the immunity ruling. Judge Shottigan and Laura also debated the legitimacy of the special counsel appointment. Laura planned to file a motion challenging the appointment of Jack Smith, the special counsel, citing a legal precedent that was used to dismiss another case against Trump in Florida. The judge, however, expressed skepticism about this argument. Okay, so this judge is not exactly unbiased in this, although she should be, because she has been presiding over the January 6th rioters, which in my personal opinion, stupidity there all around as well. But she stated in those rulings, even though Trump was not part of their hearing, Trump was not indicted for anything that happened on January 6th for those particular hearings, she had constantly brought up Trump, and she has made it known that she despises Trump, that she feels Trump is is responsible and all this. So she is an impartial. She is very partial. She is not an impartial judge. Which honestly, I think that a conflict of interest is definitely there, where even though she refuses to recuse herself, but it gives more fodder to the appeal. And also, I mean, Smith wants to push this forward. Obviously, leaking out more information, trying to damage the election, not re-election, the election of Donald Trump to get another 4-year term is really the game plan, because let's face it, much like Venezuela, much like, let's say Russia, Cuba, other communist nations where the DOJ is weaponized, and that is, I'm an attorney. It is very disconcerting to see a Department of Justice be weaponized, but also that judges that are supposed to be blind, that are supposed to be impartial, are not acting as such. But the bottom line is that, again, they're thrusting forward another trial in hopes that, let's say, oh my God, we the people are so screwed. If Trump wins, yes, he can pardon himself. He could stop, or not even pardon himself. He could just stop the DOJ from prosecuting this and drop all of these cases. But even worse, this is going to set up yet another impeachment. I mean, at some point, we need to get back to common sense. And we are so far away from common sense. And the judge, which, by the way, is a lower court judge, and the United States Supreme Court judge, justices are over her. She likes to question the relevance of Justice Clarence Thomas's comments on the matter. As the case progresses, the potential impact of the November election remains a significant factor. Now, what we have noted in the past, though, is that anytime they brought indictments, anytime they brought out news of legal issues against Trump, it has helped Trump. People are finding that he is being persecuted. And honestly, this is a weaponization. Clear and simple. It is a witch hunt, and Trump is the witch, and the pitchforks are out, and they still want his head on a spit. And honestly, if we can just get past that drama, maybe we can focus on more important issues. And speaking of trauma, of more drama, huge issues happening today. So on September 5th, Hunter Biden was supposed to begin jury selection on his tax evasion trial. And he goes in there and announces a surprise plea. Hunter Biden basically did a surprise legal maneuver by entering an Alford plea in his tax case, which was set to begin jury selection, September 5th. This plea allows Biden to acknowledge that the evidence against him is sufficient for conviction while still maintaining his innocence regarding the charges. The move aims to avoid the lengthy trial process and expedite the sentencing phase instead. The Alford plea, which is named after a Supreme Court decision, is often used to resolve legal disputes without a trial by bypassing the typical plea negotiating process. However, basically, this normally, and this isn't the first time the Alford plea has been used. Obviously, it is commonplace in federal criminal and other criminals, kind of like a no contest plea, if you will, in state court. But the big thing is it was a blindside to the prosecution. Normally, defense attorneys reach out to the prosecutor saying, hey, we want to enter into this. We're going to just go straight to sentencing before the judge. And of course, everybody's saying, oh, it's because Hunter knows that his dad did a wink, wink. There you go, son. Don't worry about it. I'll pardon you. The presiding judge, Mark Scarsi, yet to decide whether to accept this plea and has recessed the case to allow time for prosecutors to respond, which they did object to it. Now, let's flash back a year ago where there was another failed plea agreement, which was a sweetheart deal, which the judge then was like, wait a minute. You're doing a diversion program diversion plea, like to do a diversion, sweep under not only what you guys are alleging that he committed, tax evasion, tax fraud, things of that nature, but also any future potential crimes that are down. And that's why that got scrapped. Now, Hunter's attorneys are still saying that there was a plea, it should not be set aside. But again, when it started being questioned, they explained no deal, no deal. And others are looking at this case as the Department of Justice's attempt to save face. Because the Department of Justice, the Federal Department of Justice, oh, woe was you. It is painted with so much drama. It is painted with the wide brush of scandal and favoritism. Now, what's even more interesting is on September 5th, as this plea was announced and everybody was like, blindsided by this, the White House press secretary, Miss Jean-Pierre, she was asked whether Biden's going to pardon his son, and she keeps saying no. The White House has no plans of interfering in this case and pardoning. Now, obviously, the jig is up. Okay. Yes, there is supposed to be a trial. There are 120 potential jurors on hold in queue to go through the voir dire process. However, Daddy's no longer running for president. And whatever happens in November, he's not going to be president after January 21st. So now's the time. So if you go in there and say, I'm going to plead, basically, I'm not contesting the charges. I'm going to put in this Alford plea. I'm not contesting it. I'm still saying that I'm innocent, but you know what? I believe there's enough evidence to convict me. I'm throwing myself before the court for sentencing. The speculation is that Daddy's going to come in and save the day. So on that note, we have gone up and down on some emotional issues. Again, on behalf of Purple Politics, my heart, my prayers go to all the families, those that lost their lives in that Georgia massacre, and those hostages, the families of the hostages that lost their lives in a cruel execution by Hamas, and those that are still being held in Hamas. I am Alina Gonzalez Dockery. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you in our next episode.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.